I am going to tell you a little bit about a woman whom we will call Ruth. Ruth just spent the better part of a decade being hugely mistreated and stolen from on so many levels by a leech and a liar, her husband. She spent those years pouring out love the best way she knew how, as day in and day out she experienced nothing but alienation, isolation, and rejection, reaping only unrequited love, which, by the way, is by no means anything new to her. You see, Ruth is one of those women who many men take one look at and dismiss, or they might even take some time to get to know her a little, and then simply coldly render her the sister or the mother they never had, but never the true love they've never had, and even thinking somehow they've paid her a compliment, but really only crushed her heart that much more. Ruth isn't a bombshell of a woman like Mae West, swinging her hips through a door as men trip over themselves to get one glance at her, nor does she in any way look like Medusa, turning men to stone when they look her way. In fact, she's a quiet, average-appearing sort of person who, because of the life she's led, views the world around her in a very different way than many and sees a lot of things many people miss. It's not to say she's perfect and has it all together, or that she herself has the right idea of what love in a marriage truly looks like. In fact, she's just as broken as many of those around her, and she too has bought into lies the world tells us about that kind of love, thus her current situation. Right now, she's filled with fear and insecurity, even more than ever before, and is even fighting off that awful, ugly monster called self-pity, while each day she tries to put one foot in front of the other as she's picking up the mess of rubble spread out around her. Some people might look at Ruth, point a finger, and say, "I told you so," or "What were you thinking?" Some might say, "Maybe you should just marry for money this time," or "Maybe you're a closet case and don't know it," or some other hateful lie straight from the pit of hell, succeeding only in piercing her soul with more pain, rejection, insecurity, and fear. Others may love her enough to simply hug her and not breathe a word as God works in her heart. Some might secretly stand on the sidelines and pray for her. Some might love her by attending to the practical needs, making sure she's got a roof over her head or gas in her car. And some may love her by loudly cheering her on to keep on keeping on, and even better, encourage her to put her trust wholeheartedly in the Lord and give him those pieces of rubble. Ruth isn't alone in her skewed view of what love in a marriage looks like, and she certainly isn't alone in her misled endeavor to find that love. Nor is she alone in having too quickly poured out love to another who is completely unworthy of that affection, only to find herself unloved, rejected, and empty. Fact is, we see too many, women and men alike, who do the same thing and eventually become embittered and angry and drown in a sea of sorrow, their spirit wasting away in loneliness and fear. We even see those who become disillusioned about love, and rather than take the time to evaluate their idea of what love looks like and compare it with the Word of God and realign themselves with His Word, they instead blindly barrel forward in more self-destructive behavior, only to find themselves even more empty and lonely, never having experienced true love as God ordained and showed us in His Word. So what do? How does our world find true love? And further, how do we give it? How do we know when God places the right companion for us in our lives? How do we know we aren't blindly barreling down a self-destructive path? I honestly don't have an easy answer, and maybe I am Ruth with dusty and bleeding fingers, picking up the pieces of rubble in my life, trying with all my might to lift up those pieces to give to God. I do know one thing. Ruth will be okay. Why? Because even though she might not yet have grasped that answer as to what true love in a marriage looks like, both on the giving and on the receiving, she's definitely on the right path so long as she keeps her eyes on the Lord and seeks His face. I think one good starting step for Ruth in understanding what true love looks like, and for all of us for that matter, is remembering that no greater love has he than he who lays down his own life for another. That might be a good starting point. I think I might also say to Ruth, no time like the present to pour out the love she has in her heart to Christ, who loved her from the start, and entrust her heart solely to him, placing it in God's hands for him to keep.